He left us, sir. Mama said you might help. The girl looked up from the porch. The lonely Baron opened the door and said, "You're home." Wyoming Territory, winter of 1887. The wind howled through the pines like a hungry coyote, dragging flurries of snow across the valley floor. On a lonely ridge stood a modest ranch house, its chimney coughing thin trails of smoke into a gray sky. The wooden porch creaked under the shifting frost. The land was still, save for the soft thud of approaching footsteps, small, unsure, urgent. She could not have been more than 6. Her boots were too big, her coat torn, sleeves hiding trembling hands. She stared up at the door as if it held the last chance in a world gone dark. With a fist balled and brave, she knocked. For a moment, nothing. Then heavy footsteps behind a thick cedar door. A latch clicked. The door swung open. Silas Reed stood in the frame, tall, broad-shouldered, unshaven from winter days spent in solitude. 34, eyes the color of cold steel, a man who had once ridden with the cavalry and later left it all behind. His life now stretched only as far as the boundaries of his land and the silence of his house. But what stood before him shattered that silence. A little girl, dirt on her cheeks, eyes wide, brown with flecks of amber. "He left us, sir," she said, voice quivering. "Mama said you might help." Silas blinked. Once. The girl sniffled, clutching something to her chest, a worn piece of cloth. There was blood on it. "Mama?" he asked, the word scratching his throat. "She's hurt bad, in the woods. She told me to find Silas. She said you'd know what to do." He crouched to her level, his face tightening. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Annabelle," she whispered. "Mama's name is Amara." Silas froze. The name cut through him like a buried shard of glass. His lips parted, but no words came. "Please, sir," Annabelle said, tears finally spilling. "Mama said you're the only one who'd come." 1,000 thoughts crashed through him. He hadn't heard that name in years. Not since the day she left town, vanished from his world like smoke on the plains. Silas looked past the girl, out to the tree line, where snow thickened and night crept fast. "How far?" he asked. "Not far. I followed the river like she said. She's in a hollow past the broken wagon wheel tree." That tree, he knew it, a forked elm struck by lightning years back. He stood, jaw clenching. "Come inside, you're freezing." Annabelle shook her head. She said, "Don't wait. She's bleeding, and her legs, she screamed when I touched it." Silas turned on his heel. In one fluid motion, he grabbed his coat, rifle, and bedroll. He tossed a wool blanket over the girl. "You're riding with me." She followed him down the steps, silent now, eyes watching every move he made. He hoisted her onto the horse, mounted behind her, and kicked the animal into a gallop. The wind bit through his coat, the snow blurred his vision, but in his mind there was only one thing now, Amara. As the horse charged down the ridge, Silas fought the storm, the cold, and the roaring tide of memory rising from a part of him he had buried long ago. He never stopped asking why she left. But tonight, those answers would have to wait. She needed him. And this time, he would not be too late. The cold deepened as they rode, but Silas did not slow. Wind stung their faces as the gelding climbed the frozen riverbed. He had wrapped Annabelle in his oilskin coat. She held the saddle horn tight, silent, eyes locked forward as if her focus alone could bring them to her mother faster. "Keep your head down," Silas said over the wind. "We're close now. What did you mean by the wagon wheel tree?" "Here's a big one, split in the middle. Mama said it would point the way." He knew the one, an old lightning-struck elm on the north ridge. He'd once carved his initials into it, next to hers. He veered off the trail, hooves cracking over the ice. Night was falling fast. Snow turned to sleet. In the trees ahead, a growl rippled through the air. Wolves. Silas reined in sharply. Annabelle tensed. "Don't look," he murmured. "They won't follow." Yellow eyes flashed briefly in the woods, but the storm looming was enough to keep them back. Then he saw her. A dark form slumped beneath fallen branches. Torn fabric. Blood in the snow. He leapt down before the horse stopped. "Stay back, Annabelle." He dropped to his knees. Amora. She lay half buried in snow, hair frozen in clumps. A gash split her temple. Her lips were pale, her shoulders soaked red. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Still there. Barely. "Amara, it's me. It's Silas. I've got you now." She stirred faintly but did not wake. Her leg twisted unnaturally. He pulled off his scarf, wrapping her shoulder, hands moving fast but careful. As he lifted her, something caught his eye, a thin white scar curling along her wrist. Old. Hidden once, but now exposed. A story unspoken. He remembered the long sleeves, even in summer. He remembered the silence. He held her tighter, carried her to the horse, lifted Annabelle between them, climbed on. The ride back was slower. The storm pressed close, hooves sinking deeper. And in the quiet, memory returned. She had come to town when they were 20, half Navajo, raised by a missionary aunt. She worked at the saloon first, quiet, graceful. Then the dress shop. She had laughed like water over stones. She smelled of sage and freedom. She danced barefoot by the creek. He had loved her instantly. His father had hated her from the start. "You'd throw away this ranch for a squaw," the old man had spat. "You'd do this? You're no son of mine." Silas had pleaded, argued. He had stood on the porch one night, ring in his pocket, heart at war. And then she was gone. No warning, no note, until weeks later, a letter in the post. He kept it still, though he never read it twice. "Live the life you were born into. Don't come looking. Some love is better left buried." But love like that did not stay buried. Not if she had sent their child to find him. He looked down at the woman in his arms, cold against his chest. The storm whipped around them, biting and merciless. She had run once to protect him from losing everything. Now she had come back, broken and desperate, because there was no one else left. And this time, he would not let her go. Amara woke to the scent of cedar smoke, and something warm pressed against her back. She blinked, the light in the room soft and golden. A fire crackled nearby. Her shoulder ached, her leg throbbed, but it was the silence that disoriented her, peaceful, unfamiliar. Her eyes opened fully. Wooden beams above, a tin kettle steaming gently on the hearth, a wool blanket tucked around her, too carefully placed to be her own doing. She tried to sit up, winced and gasped. Footsteps approached. She turned her head and saw him. Silas stood in the doorway, arms folded, leaning against the frame like he had been standing there for hours. His beard was longer than she remembered, his eyes deeper set, but they were the same eyes that used to make her forget the world. "Amara," he said softly, not moving. Her lips parted. Her throat was dry. "Silas, you still here?" He nodded. "Never left." A silence settled between them, heavy, sacred. Her eyes welled before she could stop them. One tear traced down her cheek, then another. She looked away. "I thought maybe you'd forget." He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the stove, poured water into a tin cup, and brought it to her. She reached with her good arm, fingers brushing his as she took it. "Annabelle?" she whispered. "She's safe, sleeping in the next room. She hasn't let go of your shawl." Amara exhaled slowly, relief passing over her face like sunlight through clouds. She took a sip, then another. "You found us," she said finally, not quite looking at him. "You sent her to me," he replied. "She found me." Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and the years between them collapsed. But neither reached across the space that remained. "I wrapped your leg as best I could," Silas said, stepping back. "Your shoulder, too. You'll need rest." "Thank you." He gave a short nod, turned away. "Silas?" she said, almost too softly. He stopped. "I did not know where else to go." "You came to the right place," he said without turning around. Then he stepped out, closing the door gently behind him. The days passed slow. Amara healed, inch by inch, and Silas moved around her like a ghost, present, watchful, but never lingering too long. He fed the fire, brought her broth, checked the bandages. Their conversations were few, careful, rehearsed. "Do you need anything?" "No, thank you." "Your pain?" "Manageable." But every now and then their eyes would meet, and the things unsaid would press between them, louder than any words. Amara noticed the way he limped slightly now, a wound, perhaps from long ago. He noticed how she flinched in her sleep, even when no noise disturbed her. One afternoon, Annabelle came running in with a bundle of crumpled paper and a fistful of charcoal. "Look, Mama," she beamed. "I drew our house." Amara smiled and took the paper. "It's beautiful, sweet girl." Annabelle turned to Silas, holding out another drawing. "And this is you chopping wood, see? That's your beard." Silas laughed under his breath. "You got it too short." "Oops," she giggled. "Next time I'll draw it scruffier." Then she paused, looked up at Amara, then back at Silas. She tilted her head. "Can I call you—" She hesitated, cheeks flushing. "I mean, is it okay if I call you Mr. Silas?" The room froze. Silas opened his mouth, but no sound came. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Annabelle shifted awkwardly, looking down. "Sorry, Mama always said you were kind. I didn't mean to—" "It's all right," Silas said gently, crouching beside her. "You can call me whatever feels right to you." She nodded slowly, then slipped into her mother's arms. Amara stared at the fireplace, eyes distant. "She's always been strong," she murmured. Silas sat on the edge of the chair across from her. He did not speak. He just watched the fire crackle, the way her eyes reflected it like the sky just before stormlight. There was so much to say, but not yet. Not tonight. The afternoon light crept through the cabin window, spilling gold across the worn floorboards. The fire had died down to embers, and a hush hung over the house like snow before a storm. Silas stood outside, chopping wood, rhythmic and steady, the crack of axe on oak a dull echo in the quiet hills. Inside, Amara sat on the edge of the bed, her shoulder aching from the chill. She had tried to change the bandage herself, but her arm would not bend right. She winced as the salve slipped from her fingers, landing with a soft thud on the floor. She cursed under her breath, tried again, stretching her arm behind her back, biting her lip. The door creaked. "You should let someone help with that," Silas said. She turned sharply, startled, the blanket slipping from her shoulder. Her bare skin was exposed, bruised and marked. Silas paused in the doorway, eyes catching the edge of the scar she always tried to hide. "I can manage," she said quickly, reaching for the cloth. But he stepped forward anyway. "Let me—" Amara froze, then nodded once. Slowly, cautiously, he knelt beside her. His fingers were rough from work, but they moved with care as he dipped the salve, pressing it gently into the torn skin. She flinched, not from pain, but from memory. His touch was so quiet, so unlike the hands she had known these past years. Silas swallowed. "Who did this to you?" "Who?" She stared at the floor. Her voice came low, like dust brushing across stone. "Wesley Granger." He stiffened. "The rancher? Granger's still alive?" "Very much, and more powerful than before." Silas set the salve down slowly. Amara pulled the blanket back up, clutching it to her chest. "I was young and scared," she began. "After I left you, I thought I could disappear into some corner of the territory. But Granger found me, offered safety, promised kindness. He wanted a wife who'd make him look noble, a native bride, tamed and soft-spoken." Silas clenched his jaw. "He never loved me," she continued. "He owned me. I was a trophy to parade at gatherings, a thing to dress up and shut away. He beat me if I spoke out, kept me locked in the back of the house most days, would not let me leave the ranch, not without one of his men watching." Silas stood, pacing to the window, his hand gripping the frame. "I tried to leave once," she said. "He found me in the hills and dragged me back by my hair." Silas's voice was barely audible. "And Annabelle?" A silence. He knew she wasn't his. I never told him, but he saw it. Her eyes, her laugh. She reminded him of everything he could never control. Her hands trembled as she spoke. He started to say things that she'd ruin his name, that people would talk. "One night he beat me until I couldn't move. Then he took Annabelle, dragged us both out to the edge of the canyon. I thought he was going to kill us." Silas turned, horror painted across his face. "But he didn't," she whispered. "He left us there, like garbage. Said if we came back, he'd finish what he started." Her eyes filled again. "I woke up bleeding. My leg was shattered. I told Annabelle to follow the river, to find a man named Silas. I didn't even know if you were alive." He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her. "You came to me?" he said hoarsely. "I had no one else," she whispered, "no one I ever trusted." He reached up, fingers brushing her cheek, but didn't touch. "I should have fought for you," he said. "Back then, I should have burned the whole damn ranch down." Amara looked at him then, eyes wide and full of something raw. "You were young," she said, "and I didn't want to be the reason you lost everything. But I lost you," he murmured. For a moment they said nothing. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Do you blame me for not telling you about her?" "No," he said. "I blame myself for giving you a reason not to." They sat there in the firelight, time bending around them like the wind outside. She closed her eyes, and he reached for her hand, holding it gently, like something that might break. And in that stillness, something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the beginning of it. The snow had melted into slush around the yard, revealing patches of brown earth and last year's grass. Spring came late to the Wyoming hills, but today there was sunlight, thin, pale, but honest. Silas stood by the porch rail, arms crossed, watching Annabelle near the corral. She hummed softly, bent over a piece of wood, moving a stub of charcoal in careful arcs. Her curls caught the light like honeyed rope, the way she scrunched her nose when focused, just like Amara once did. When she laughed, it wasn't Wesley's echo, it was his. He gripped the rail harder. The tilt of her head, the shape of her mouth. These were pieces of a past he had tried to bury. Now they were alive, playing in the yard. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Amara stepped out, shawl wrapped tight, her limp still visible. Her face was pale, healing, but her eyes were unchanged. always carrying more than they let on. She likes the mornings, she said. She gets that from you? They stood in silence, watching the girl. Finally, Silas turned. His voice was low but edged. Amara, is she mine? Amara stiffened, gaze falling to the porch floor. I didn't want you to feel tied to me, she said, or to her. I knew what it would cost you, back then. That's not an answer. She took a breath, clutching her shawl. Yes, she whispered, she is. The air shifted. Silas looked back at Annabel, now drawing horses in the dirt with his stick. How long? Since the first time I felt her heartbeat, Amara said. I thought about writing you, but I kept telling myself it would ruin your life, that staying away was protecting you. He turned, eyes sharp. From what? The truth? No, she said, voice strained. From being forced to choose, from your father's threats, from this town, from losing everything like I did. He ran a hand through his hair. You think I'd have walked away if I knew? You walked away when it was just me. That's not fair, he snapped. You left a note, then disappeared. She met his gaze, steady despite the tremble in her hands. Your father came to me, said he'd disown you, strip your name, offered to have me handled. I thought I was saving you. Silas fell silent. He remembered the silence that followed, the empty station platform, the wrinkled letter weeks later. He'd never asked why. He only hurt. I didn't want Annabel to grow up afraid, Amara said. But I failed. And when he threw us out, when I thought I'd die, I told her to find you. Because even after all these years, I believed you would try. He exhaled hard, fists clenched. She's mine, he murmured. Not a question, a truth. I never meant to hide her, Amara said, only to protect her. Maybe I was wrong. He looked down. Annabel now knelt in the grass, arranging wildflowers in neat little rows, like a ceremony no one taught her, but she somehow understood. I missed 7 years, he said bitterly. You can have every year after this, she whispered. He turned to her, and something inside him broke. I don't want to miss another day, he said, voice catching, not with her, not with you. But Amara didn't reach for him. She just looked at him, full of truths too deep for blame and too old for easy forgiveness. Silas stepped down the porch, crossing the yard. Annabel, he called softly. She looked up. Yes, Mr. Silas? He knelt beside her. Would it be all right if I kept one of these flowers for my windowsill? She grinned and handed him the brightest. Mama says yellow ones mean hope. He smiled gently, holding it with care. I think your mama's right. The days lengthened and the wind grew warmer. Spring took slow hold of the valley, coaxing green shoots from the earth and laughter from a child's throat. Silas said little, but his actions spoke louder than words ever could. He repaired the broken hinge on the barn door without being asked, replaced the cracked pane in Amara's room. He spent hours sharpening tools long neglected, reshaping the cabin from a place of waiting into a place of living. Every morning, he split wood for the stove, stacking it neatly on the porch. Every evening, he swept the hearth before turning in. Not once did he look for thanks. Amara watched him through the window as he built a small bench just the right height for Annabel. He carved her initials into the side. When it was done, he didn't present it with pride. He simply left it outside the front steps, where the little girl would find it. She did. She squealed with delight. Mama, look, my own porch seat. Amara smiled and turned away quickly, her eyes stinging. Later, Silas saddled his old gelding and lifted Annabel gently onto the saddle. He walked beside the horse as she held the reins, one hand always near in case she slipped. She shouted with joy when the horse broke into a slow trot. "She's a natural," he told Amara that evening, rubbing his neck as he returned. "Takes after someone with strong blood." Amara did not answer, but her gaze lingered on him longer than usual. That night she could not sleep. Her leg still throbbed in the cold. When she stirred, she found an extra pillow tucked beneath her knee, placed while she slept. On the small table beside her, a cloth-wrapped stone sat steaming in a bowl. Warmth radiated through it, a makeshift heater. She stared at it for a long time. No note, no gesture, just quiet care. Her throat tightened. The next morning she walked outside just after sunrise. She stopped when she saw Silas sitting cross-legged in the dirt, Annabelle nestled in his lap. He was carefully braiding her hair, fingers clumsy but gentle. "Too tight?" he asked. Annabelle giggled. "A little." He redid the braid, more delicate this time. Amara stepped back inside before they noticed her. One evening, as dusk poured over the hills, Silas sat on the porch with a whittling knife, carving something small and curved. Amara passed behind him, on her way to gather herbs. She paused. "What are you making?" He held it up without turning. "A hair comb. For her, so she can feel pretty, even when things are hard." She said nothing. But that night, she placed a sprig of lavender on his workbench. Once, she found him asleep on the floor beside Annabelle's bed, his hand still curled protectively around hers. The little girl was dreaming peacefully, one arm thrown over his chest. Amara leaned in the doorway, her hand covering her mouth. He did not stir, but a tear traced down his cheek. Days passed like that, quiet, intentional. They did not speak of love. But love hung in the air like the scent of pine, ever present, even if unacknowledged. Amara found herself humming again while stirring stew. She laughed when Annabelle stuck flour in her hair. She reached for Silas's hand once, by accident, and did not pull away fast enough. Still, neither of them said the words. Still, silence was safer. Until one evening she stepped outside to find him fixing the porch rail, his shirt damp with sweat, sleeves rolled high. "Why do you keep doing this?" she asked quietly. He looked up. "Because I want you both to stay." She swallowed. "That's not an answer." He stood slowly, wiped his hands. "It's the only one I have." And he walked past her into the house. She stood there a long time, staring at the sky, her fingers shaking, her heart rising and falling like breath held too long. The wind shifted that morning. Silas noticed it first, how the horses grew restless in the corral, ears twitching toward the southern trail. The birds had gone quiet. Even the pine trees seemed to brace themselves. Then came the dust. 4 riders. He stepped off the porch, rifle in hand, and narrowed his eyes as the figures drew closer. At the lead, slouched in a black coat that gleamed like tar, rode Wesley Granger. Beside him were hired guns, mean-eyed and saddle-worn, the kind who followed coin more than cause. Silas stood his ground. Granger reined in, a smug grin stretching across his face like rot on fruit. "Reed," he drawled, "I see you've been playing house." Silas's voice was ice. "Turn around. You're not welcome here." Granger dismounted, tossing the reins aside like he owned the soil beneath his boots. "You've got something that belongs to me." "You've got nothing here," Silas replied. Granger sneered. "My wife, my daughter." "Huh? She was never yours," a voice said from the doorway. Amara stepped onto the porch, spine straight despite the tremor in her leg. She held Annabelle close behind her, one hand resting on the child's shoulder. Granger's eyes narrowed. I see the bitch can still speak, he said. Thought I fixed that last time. Silas moved between them. You speak to her again, you'll eat your words, one tooth at a time. Granger raised his hand, and two of his men drew their weapons. Amara gasped and pulled Annabel behind her. The moment cracked. Silas lunged first, knocking one gunman sideways with the butt of his rifle. The second fired, grazing Silas's arm. Then chaos. Wood splintered, horses screamed, a blade flashed, catching Silas in the shoulder, deep, hot pain blooming down his side. He stumbled, but didn't fall. Granger reached for Amara. You think you can hide her from me forever? She slapped his hand away. She's not yours. He struck her hard across the face. Annabel screamed. Silas roared. He tackled Granger, both men slamming into the porch rail, fists flying. Blood smeared the wood. Granger drew a knife, driving it toward Silas's chest, but Amara snatched a shovel from the wall and swung. The blade cracked against Granger's side. He dropped the knife, cursing. Silas seized it, pressing the tip to Granger's throat. Go ahead, Granger spat. Kill me. See how long it takes the law to find you. Silas didn't blink. I am the law out here. But before he could move, a crowd began to gather. Neighbors, ranchers, townsfolk, drawn by the noise and smoke. Among them, the sheriff, flanked by deputies. Enough, the sheriff barked. Everyone stand down. Amara stepped forward, bleeding lip and fire in her eyes. I have something to say. The crowd hushed. This man, she said, pointing to Granger, is no husband. He's a slaver, a trafficker. He's been moving people across the territory, native women and orphans, under the guise of charity. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hagel was last seen alive at Jumcash, 2 weeks after me, just millions of miles away. He beat me, locked me away, threatened to kill my child, and now he wants her back so he can preserve his good name. She turned to the sheriff. You can check his ranch. In the cellar, he keeps ledgers and cages. The sheriff glanced at his deputy, who nodded grimly. Then Amara looked at the people, at the neighbors who once averted their gaze. Annabel is the daughter of Silas Reed, she said loud and clear, and I am no man's property. Silence. Then a voice spoke up. We've seen Granger's wagons, moving late at night, no cargo. Another chimed in. My cousin's girl disappeared last spring, worked for him. The tide turned. The sheriff stepped forward. Wesley Granger, you're under arrest. Hands up. The gunmen hesitated, but the sight of 10 rifles aimed their way broke their resolve. They dropped their weapons. Granger stood frozen, blood on his face, fury in his eyes. You think this makes you free? He snarled at Amara. I was never yours to own, she said. As deputies dragged him away, Annabel clutched her mother's hand, eyes wide. Silas leaned against the porch rail, blood soaking his shirt. Amara rushed to him. You're hurt, Silas. You're bleeding bad. He looked at her through pain-hazed eyes. Worth it, he rasped. I'd take a dozen more if it meant keeping you both safe. She held his face in her hands. You don't have to fight any more, she whispered. But in that moment he realized he always would. Because some things, some people, were worth every fight. Silas drifted in and out of sleep for 3 days. The fever came first, then the shaking. Amara sat beside him through every hour, wiping his brow with damp cloths, whispering words only his heart could hear. Annabel curled up by the foot of the bed, too afraid to leave, as if any distance might break the spell of his breathing. The wound on his shoulder was deep. Infection had tried to take root, but Amara knew the old ways. Roots steeped in boiling water, crushed leaves for drawing out the rot. She whispered prayers in Navajo under her breath, the same ones her mother once whispered over her as a child. On the fourth night, he opened his eyes. "You stayed?" he murmured. "Of course," she whispered. His hand found hers, weak but steady. "I do not know what happens next," he said, "but if you let me, I'd like to be your husband, to be her father, not in name, in truth." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I forgave you," she said, voice trembling, "the moment I told her to find you." He smiled faintly, his fingers brushing her cheek. "Then let's begin again. Not from the past, from now." She nodded, pressing her forehead to his, their breath mingling between them. Outside, the wind had shifted again, but this time it carried the scent of spring. Wesley Granger was taken into custody days later. The charges were quiet but damning. Whispers from townsfolk, a sheriff's raid, a stack of ledgers that spoke louder than any confession. His empire crumbled under the weight of secrets long buried. And then it was over. No more running, no more hiding. The cabin changed slowly, lovingly. The porch was repaired, painted with leftover whitewash Silas had stored for years. A garden bloomed near the fence. Wildflowers, Amara planted by hand, herbs tucked between stones. Annabelle chose the colors, blue and yellow like sky and sun. Laughter returned, not as a guest but as a resident. Silas built Annabelle a swing from an old wagon wheel and rope. She soared over the field, squealing with joy as the wind caught her dress. Amara hung laundry in the sun, her hair braided, her smile unguarded. She sang again, sometimes in English, sometimes in Navajo. And when she sang, Silas paused whatever he was doing just to listen. To her amazement, Silas paused to listen. In the evenings, they sat on the porch together, watching the light stretch long across the valley, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. They did not speak much of the past, not because it hurt, but because the present was finally enough. One morning, Annabelle burst into the cabin with her cheeks flushed and hair full of grass. "Mama, Papa, come see." They followed her outside. The field had bloomed overnight. Poppies, daisies, bluebells scattered like confetti across the hills. The wind moved through them like a hymn. She pointed to the far end of the meadow, where her pony waited, reins draped over the fence. "Watch me ride," she shouted. And she did, galloping through the wildflowers, laughing like the world had never known darkness. Silas wrapped an arm around Amara's waist, pulling her close. "She's free," he said. "She is," Amara replied, tears rising again, not from pain this time, but from something so full it almost hurt. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "So are we." She nodded. They stood in silence, watching their daughter fly across the earth like wind made flesh. Inside the cabin, tucked away in a drawer once filled with regret, sat a new letter. It was written in Silas's hand, addressed simply, "For her, someday." And it read, "Wherever your heart returns, my love, know that I am there. A home is not made from wood or stone. A home is where two people choose each other again and again, where laughter echoes, even after tears, where bullets missed but hearts never did. Where the heart returns, that is home. In the Wild West, where justice rode slow and love often rode alone, some hearts waited years to come home. Silas and Amara lost more than time. They lost the innocence of first love, but in the quiet after the storm, they found something braver than youth, forgiveness, family, and a second chance to be whole. If this story touched your heart, there are many more waiting to be told. of star-crossed lovers, outlaws redeemed, and love that defied every frontier. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories and ride with us through tales where bullets missed, but hearts never did. Hit the bell, stay wild, and remember, where the heart returns, that is home.